The night my father lost his crown and I found my name. If you've never sat at a table where you're both the punchline and the blood sacrifice, I don't recommend it. The night my father retired was supposed to be his coronation. 40 years in the same multinational company. Climbing from junior analyst to regional VP. It was a story he'd told so many times he no longer remembered which parts were true and which parts were polished. To everyone in the room, he was Richard Hale, the self-made man, the king of the open plan office kingdom, the mentor, the provider, the patriarch. To me, he was the man who taught me that love had a measurable ROI, and who had decided long ago that my particular investment wasn't worth it. The restaurant he chose sat at the top of a glass tower downtown, all floor-to-ceiling windows and chrome fixtures. From the outside, the building looked like a shard of light stabbing into the city's humid sky. Inside, a private event room had been reserved for my father's Last Supper, as my younger sister Caroline gleefully called it on the family WhatsApp thread. 60 people, easily. Managers, old colleagues, their spouses, the family scattered around the room like well-placed set dressing. We arrived 10 minutes late because my wife, Maya, refused to let me leave in a t-shirt and jeans. "You are not walking into your father's retirement dinner in startup bro casual," she'd said firmly, standing in the doorway with her arms folded. "He's going to roast me no matter what I'm wearing," I'd pointed out. "And you're going to regret giving him easy material," she'd replied, pushing a pressed white shirt into my hands. "Put this on. Humor me." I did, not because of my father, but because when Maya uses that particular tone, calm, unwavering, it means she's already decided the matter I've spent enough time pretending to be spineless in front of the world. I save my actual arguments for things that matter, so I wore the shirt, blue suit, open collar, clean, sharp, presentable. The kind of man you might assume was doing just fine if you passed him on the street. Not the unfocused disaster my father liked to call me. The maitre d' recognized our party's name immediately. "Hale retirement?" he asked. And when we nodded, he smiled the professional smile of someone who knew this was a big spin. "Right this way, they've already started cocktails." Of course they had. Maya slipped her hand into mine as we followed him through the restaurant. "Breathe," she whispered. "This is me breathing," I said. My voice came out too flat. She squeezed my fingers. "You can walk out at any point. Remember that. You're not trapped in there with them." We turned the corner into the private dining area, and noise crashed over us. Laughter, cutlery, the clink of expensive glass. A long table ran down the center of the room, with smaller side tables near the windows. A slideshow of my father's career highlights played on a muted screen, photos of him at various stages, always shaking hands, always in the center, always with the company logo somewhere nearby. He spotted my older brother Michael first. Of course, he was positioned halfway down the main table, next to my father, like a prince sitting just to the right of the throne. Michael always looked like he stepped out of a LinkedIn ad. Perfectly tailored navy suit, close-cropped haircut, Rolex gleaming. He saw us and raised his glass. "Well, well, look who made it. The creative one." Creative. The word dripped with implication. "Hey, man," I said, forcing a smile. We did the quick brother half hug, all shoulders and no sincerity. "You clean up nice," he said, glancing at my shirt as if surprised it had buttons. Then his eyes shifted to Maya, and his tone shifted too. "Maya, you look stunning as always. Seriously, Ethan, if there's one thing you didn't mess up, it's marriage." I felt my face heat, but Maya just smiled, accepting the compliment like she didn't hear the barb lodged inside it. "Good to see you too, Michael," she said. "How's Claire?" That was his wife, who I noticed was on the far end of the table laughing with one of Dad's old coworkers. "Great, great," he waved vaguely. "She's out networking me as usual. Ethan, Dad's been looking for you. He wants to position the family before speeches start." He wiggled his fingers like the phrase was in quotation marks. Of course he did. My father was obsessed with optics. Even in family photos, he had positions for us. Michael on the right, Caroline on the left, me somewhere toward the edge, as if he needed room to crop me out later. "He's over there," Michael added, tilting his head toward the far end of the table. My father was exactly where he always liked to be. the center of the room, holding court. Even with his back turned, I could tell it was him. The broad shoulders still carried like a man 20 years younger, the salt and pepper hair cut meticulously, the expensive watch visible when he gestured. He was telling some story, something about closing a difficult deal in '98, and his audience was eating it up, laughing on cue. As we approached, I noticed my mother perched at his side, smiling tightly. Sharp bob, pearls, an expression that said she'd been clenching her jaw for 30 years. Ruth Hale, the woman who'd mastered the art of performing contentment in public and silent resentment in private. She saw us first. "Oh, there you are," she said, her smile widening. "Richard, look. Ethan and Maya are here." My father turned. I've seen photos of him as a younger man. He was genuinely handsome once. Sharp jaw, clear eyes, the kind of presence that filled a room. Age hadn't carved him down so much as it had lacquered him. The years, the money, the status. They all layered over him until he became more symbol than person, even in his own mind. "About time," he said, but he smiled when he said it. For the benefit of the colleagues surrounding him, the prodigal son arrives. "I'm not late," I said, "just not early." "Which is late in this family," he replied, and they laughed. It was friendly, it was light, but the little jab pricked me anyway. Death by 1,000 jokes. He leaned over and kissed Maya's cheek. "You look lovely, dear." "Thank you, Mr. Hale," she said. She'd offered to call him Dad for years, but he'd waved it off, saying, "Mr. Hale is fine," like she was interviewing for a job instead of joining the family. He clapped me on the back. "Got you a spot near the front," he said. "Wouldn't want you drifting off during all the talk of responsibility." More laughter. I lost track of who was laughing with him and who was laughing at me. That's the thing about public humiliation dressed as humor. Everyone can pretend they're on the safer side of it. We were seated 3 spots down from my father, close enough for him to point us out, far enough that I couldn't accidentally wander into the frame of his perfect retirement photos. On my left was Caroline, my younger sister, who had always been the family's resident chaos engine. She had dyed her hair some shade of purple that probably wasn't workplace approved, and wore a black jumpsuit that walked the line between chic and defiant. "Well, if it isn't the Hale Disappointment Squad," she said when I sat down. "The only 2 people here who haven't named a boat or a baby after Dad?" "Give it time," Maya said. "We're thinking of adopting a cat and naming it Richard so we can ignore it properly." Caroline choked on her wine. "Oh my God, I love you." "Language, Caroline," my mother said automatically from across the table, like a reflex. "Sorry, Mother," Caroline mumbled, then leaned in and whispered to us. "They've already told the story of Dad's humble beginnings 3 times. By dessert, we should hit the 'he walked to work uphill both ways' portion of the evening." I managed a smile. Caroline always made everything slightly less unbearable. She didn't fear our father in the way I did. Or maybe she did and just handled it by burning everything down preemptively so he couldn't. A waiter poured champagne as everyone settled toasts were coming. I could feel it in the slight change in the room's energy. The way voices lowered. The way people adjusted in their seats. Dad stood up and tapped his glass with the stem of his fork. The chime cut through the noise like an alarm. "All right, everyone," he said, projecting without needing a microphone. "If I could have your attention for a moment, we'll begin with the sentimental portion of tonight's programming." Polite chuckles. The projector behind him displayed the company logo, then shifted to a photo of him in the '80s. Mustache, awful tie, youth. I felt my shoulders tense. Maya's fingers brushed mine under the table. "You're okay," she mouthed. I nodded, even though I wasn't. Dad ran through the greatest hits, joining the company out of college, working 16-hour days, starting a family, promotions, sacrifices, wins. He told the story of how he once closed a deal from the hospital while Mom was in labor with Michael. Everyone laughed. Mom smiled like it was charming, and not something she'd resented for 35 years. Then he pivoted to family. "And of course," he said, putting a hand dramatically over his heart, "none of this would have meant anything without my family." The slideshow shifted to photos. Mom and Dad at their wedding, Dad holding baby Michael, Dad with toddler me on his shoulders, Caroline smearing cake on her face. Michael, he said, raising his glass toward my brother, has stepped into the corporate world with the same drive and discipline I tried to model. Senior director at 38, proud doesn't begin to cover it. Michael grinned, basking. The room clapped. Caroline, Dad continued, the wild card. You certainly didn't make things easy, but you've got a fire in you. Creative, bold, might even make a name for yourself in the art world or whatever it is you do once you decide to wake up before 10 a.m. Laughter. Caroline lifted her glass in a mock salute, smirking. And then, my father said, and I could feel it coming, the way you feel a storm when the air changes. We have Ethan. The projector showed a photo of me at 7, missing 2 front teeth and holding a dinosaur toy. The room awed. Ethan, Dad repeated, stretching my name out like he was tasting it, searching for the right flavor of insult. My middle child, the free spirit. The word landed like a slap. I could hear the slight shift in the room's tone. People knew what free spirit meant when someone like my father said it. Ethan is finding his path, Dad continued. One startup here, one idea there. Not everyone needs the structure of a 9 to 5, right? He looked around, waiting for chuckles. They obliged. My face burned. I stared at the fork on my plate, afraid that if I looked up, I would see pity, amusement, maybe some satisfaction. Maya's hand tightened on my knee. I always say, my father went on, riding the wave now, you can't win them all. But hey, somebody has to keep the sofa warm for the rest of us when we're out working. He laughed, full and easy, as though he hadn't just sliced me open in front of 60 people. There it was, the line, the joke, the legend he'd been crafting about me for years, tested and perfected at smaller family gatherings, now unleashed in its final form at his retirement dinner. A few people laughed. A few didn't. The silence of those who knew better didn't comfort me. It just made me feel more naked. I felt my throat close. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to stand up and shout the truth. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to do nothing, like always. Instead, I sat there, heat flooding my face, heart hammering. And who knows, he added, that fake fatherly warmth coating his words. Maybe one day Ethan will surprise us all and stick with something long enough to succeed. That hit harder than everything else, because he knew damn well that I had stuck with something, that I had worked quietly, obsessively for years, that I had bled myself dry trying to build something I didn't even get to claim. He knew because he'd been there when it was taken from me. But that wasn't part of his story tonight. Dad raised his glass to family, the ones who make us proud, the ones who drive us crazy, and the ones who keep us humble. Maya exhaled sharply beside me, her nails dug into my skin. I could feel tears pricking behind my eyes, hot and humiliating. I swallowed them down. I refused to cry in front of him. I'd done that enough as a kid. There was a rustle beside me. Before I registered what was happening, my wife was on her feet. Can I say something? Maya's voice was calm, clear. It cut through the room like a clean blade. Dad blinked. Oh? Of course, Maya, he said. Always time for a few words from the better half. Everyone chuckled. It was supposed to be a cute, brief toast. A thank you, a compliment, something that fit into the narrative of the night. Maya took the microphone from the stand, not waiting for the staff to adjust it. She held it with the ease of someone who'd presented to far more intimidating audiences than this. She smiled at the room. I'll keep this short, she began. I know we're all hungry and eager to get to the main course, but I heard something just now that I can't let pass unnoticed. I felt my stomach drop. Maya, I whispered, tugging at her dress. Please, don't. She glanced down at me, her eyes soft but unwavering. I've got you, she mouthed. Then she turned back to the room. Richard, she said, addressing my father directly. You said family is made up of 3 kinds of people. The ones who make us proud, the ones who drive us crazy, and the ones who keep us humble. I think you left out a 4th category. The room shifted. The air thickened. My father's smile faltered. What's that? He asked with a light, joking tone that sounded thinner now. The ones who interrupt the speeches? Soft laughter, but there was a nervous edge to it. Maya's eyes didn't leave his. The ones we build our stories on, she said, without ever acknowledging what we took from them to make ourselves look good. It was like someone had cut the power for half a second. Silence, a buzz, then the low murmur of confusion. I gripped the edge of the table. Maya, I said again, low, please, we can talk about this later. We've talked about it for years, she said, not looking at me. He's talked about it his way for decades. I think it's time someone else told the truth. The word truth echoed in the quiet room. My father's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Maya, he said, his voice dropping just a fraction. This is a celebration, not a eulogy for honesty, she supplied. Don't worry, I'm not here to bury you, Richard. If anything, I'm here to resurrect a few ghosts. Someone at the back snorted, quickly stifled. My mother's eyes were wide, her hand on her pearl necklace like it could shield her. I wanted to sink into the floor. I wanted to stand up and stand with her. I didn't yet know which version of me would win. Maya took a breath, then looked around the room, making eye contact with a few of Dad's old colleagues. Many of you know Richard Hale as the man who clawed his way up from nothing, she said. The man who sacrificed, who never took a handout, who did everything the right way, the self-made man. There were nods around the table. Of course they knew that version. It was the only one he ever let them see. But here's the thing about self-made legends, Maya continued, her voice steady. They tend to leave out the bodies they climbed over, especially when those bodies share their last name. My heart stopped. My father's face went extremely still. I recognized that look. It was the same one he had when someone challenged him in a meeting in front of his superiors, a cold, assessing freeze before he went for the jugular. Maya, he said again, and this time there was no warmth in it at all. I don't appreciate. Ethan never told you this, Maya said, cutting across him, because he still, for some reason, wanted your respect. Even after everything. But you made sure everyone here knew your version of Ethan tonight. So maybe it's time they heard his. A few heads turned toward me. I wanted to disappear. My insides vibrated. Maya, I said, standing up now. Seriously, let's not do this here. Not like this. She turned slightly, just enough so that I could see her eyes. They were shining, but not with anger. With something fiercer. Protection. Love. Something I still wasn't entirely used to having directed at me. You let him do it, she said quietly enough that only I heard the words over and over. At Christmas, at Thanksgiving, at birthdays, at brunches, at your own wedding. You've let him stand over you and call you less than I'm done letting you bleed for his story. Then she tilted the microphone back to her mouth. Most of you know Ethan as the creative one, she said, adding air quotes, the one who can't stick with anything, the one who didn't inherit the Hale work ethic. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Nobody met my eye. What you don't know, Maya continued, is that 10 years ago, Ethan started a small app with a college roommate in a crappy apartment with secondhand furniture and loaned laptops. It was clumsy at first, buggy, and weird, but it had something, potential. I closed my eyes, my chest hurt. You also don't know, she said, glancing at my father again, that when that potential got interesting, the man you're celebrating tonight stepped in, not as a father, as an opportunist. A murmur rippled through the room. He offered guidance, Maya went on. He insisted that a couple of kids couldn't possibly negotiate with big investors. He demanded they bring him into the meetings. He used his position, his connections, his reputation to steer things. And when the deal finally came, and a larger company wanted to buy the app, he convinced Ethan to sign away control for stability. Her eyes locked on my father's. He also convinced the investors that if someone was going to be brought on as a strategic consultant with ongoing financial benefit, it should be him, not Ethan. My father's face darkened. That's not... He walked away with equity and an ongoing payout, Maya said over him. Ethan walked away with a modest one-time lump sum so he could get back on his feet and find something steady. And when the app exploded into a major platform 5 years later, worth 8 figures, everyone assumed the genius behind it was the guy in the suit with the polished story. All eyes were on my father now, every single one. My chest was so tight I thought I might pass out. The room swam. I grabbed the back of my chair. Ethan never corrected that assumption, Maya said, because every time he tried to talk about it, his father told him not to live in the past, to be grateful, to man up and move on. Every single failure after that got pinned on Ethan. Every struggled job, every project that fizzled, every time he tried again without his father's name attached. Richard got richer. Ethan got a reputation in this family as the one who can't finish anything. My father stood up. That's enough, he snapped, the polished veneer cracking. You are twisting things. I helped you, he said, jabbing a finger at me. You were drowning. I pulled you out. You would have signed a much worse deal if not for me. You were naive. I protected you. It was the same argument he'd used on me for years, but for the first time, he was saying it in front of other people. Did you tell him, Maya asked, her voice suddenly quiet and dangerous, that you took a consulting fee on the back end without his name on the paperwork? A hush fell. My father's silence was answer enough. Did you tell him you told the investors he wasn't committed? That you had to rein him in? That he was too emotional to be included in the board-level conversations? My mother shifted, looking at my father with something like unfamiliar horror. Richard, she whispered, did you? He shot her a look that could have frozen glass. Ruth, this is not the time. It's exactly the time, Maya said, because right now, in this room, you just told everyone that Ethan doesn't stick with anything, that he keeps the couch warm while the rest of you work, and you know that isn't true. You know he's been working nonstop for the last 3 years on something he hasn't even told you about because every time he's tried to share his dreams, you've turned them into punchlines. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My legs felt unsteady, but something else was forming inside me, something hot and electric. Maya, I said, but the word came out different this time, not a plea, more like an acknowledgement, a promise to myself that I was listening. And here's the part that really matters tonight, Maya said, turning back to the room. The part that would matter even if none of what I just said were true. Even if Ethan had tried and failed 100 times, even if he had never stuck with a single thing. You are, she pointed gently at my father, not entitled to stand here in front of his peers, his family, his nieces and nephews, and brand him a failure as part of your farewell tour. The room was taut as a wire. No one dared move. You don't get to build your hero story on his back, she said. Not anymore. My father's jaw clenched. Is this some kind of revenge, he demanded, because he didn't become what you wanted him to be? Because I didn't hand him the same path I carved out with my own hands? Do you resent me because I asked him to be a man? I felt something inside me snap into place. I stood up. Dad, I said. He turned to me like I was an afterthought. Ethan, tell your wife she's out of line, he said. This is my night. Don't let her embarrass you like this. For the first time in years, I met his gaze without dropping mine. She's not embarrassing me, I said quietly. She's the only one here who isn't. A flicker of something crossed his face. Annoyance, disbelief, something darker. Sit down, he said. You're overreacting. You always do. You're letting your feelings run the show again. That's why I'm a failure? I asked. The word hung there, ugly and heavy. He spread his hands as if this were all a reasonable discussion. I'm just telling the truth, son. You're talented, sure, but you don't have follow-through. That's not an insult, it's an observation. You could have had everything Michael has. More even if you just listened, if you just... Dad, I said louder this time. My voice cracked. Do you even know what I've been doing the last 3 years? He rolled his eyes, trying to disrupt something, I'm sure. Playing at being an entrepreneur again? I told you, that phase is over. You have a wife now. Responsibilities. It's time to be realistic. Realistic, I laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. You know what's funny? I said. You've been so focused on making sure everyone sees me as the family cautionary tale that you never bothered to ask what I actually do all day. You didn't read the emails I sent you. You didn't check the link I texted. You didn't respond when I said I had news. But you had plenty of time to repeat the same joke about my job at every single family gathering. He folded his arms. If you had something to be proud of, you would have led with it, he said. Winners don't hide victories. They don't sulk in the corner waiting for a pat on the back. Maya let out a short, disbelieving sound. You really have no idea, she said. What are you talking about? My mother cut in, her voice high and thin. Ethan, what are you talking about? Michael, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. Can we please not turn this into some dramatic, whatever this is, he said. Dad worked his ass off for this career. He deserves a night where the attention is on him, not your feelings. My feelings, I repeated, staring at him. You think this is about my feelings? Well, you have been a little sensitive, Caroline began, but I could tell by her expression she wasn't fully on their side. I took a deep breath. There are moments in your life when you know, with bone-deep certainty, that everything after will be sorted into before and after. I could feel that line forming now, sharp and bright. Fine, I said. Let's talk about something other than my feelings. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, but my voice, strangely, was not. I tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward my father. Do you know what this is? I asked. He glanced at it, impatient. I'm not going to read your little blog right now, Ethan, he said. Put that away. We're in the middle of... It's not a blog, I said. It's a stock ticker. The room had gone so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the projector. The green line bouncing up, I said. That's the current value of a company called Luminark. You probably haven't heard of it. They prefer staying quiet. B2B, back-end infrastructure, not very sexy. But they build systems that make other companies faster, smarter, more secure. My father blinked. What does that have to do with... I co-founded it, I said. He stopped. I didn't name it after myself, I continued. Didn't even put my face on the website. I learned my lesson there. We incorporated under a holding company name you've never heard me mention, because the last time I made something with potential, you turned it into a networking opportunity. A few people shifted in their seats. I could feel eyes bouncing between my father and me like a tennis match. For 3 years, I said, while you've been making couch jokes, I've been building Luminark with 2 partners we bootstrapped. We took no money from you. We kept our heads down. We got our first big client 18 months ago, then another, then 10 more. Last year, a private equity firm approached us with an offer. My father's mouth opened, then closed. We negotiated this time without you, I said. Turns out, I do know how to talk to investors when my father isn't telling them I'm unreliable behind my back. I took a breath. The room felt like it was tilting, but I kept going. They took a majority stake, I said. We kept significant equity. They brought in a high-profile CEO as part of the deal because none of us wanted to play that role. I stayed on as chief architect. And because I actually learned something from you, I made sure my name is on every single contract in a way that cannot be magically edited later. I placed my phone flat on the table and pushed it toward him, toward everyone. The deal closed 6 months ago, I said. It was in the business section, if you ever read anything that didn't have your own name in it. So when you make jokes about me not having follow-through, when you tell your friends I'm still floundering, you're not just wrong, you're out of date. He stared at the screen like it was in another language. What are you saying? My mother whispered, eyes darting between us. Ethan, are you saying you... I'm saying, I replied, that your middle child, the free spirit, the couch guardian, is the majority owner of stock in a company currently valued in the high 8 figures. The air left the room. And I'm saying, I added, because the part of me that had been twisted under his thumb for decades was finally done, that when you humiliate me in public, you're not punching down at the family screw-up. You're punching up at the man who, if he wanted to, could buy this restaurant and fire the chef for overcooking the steak. A few people laughed, stunned, involuntary. Most just stared. My father's face was unreadable. Rage, disbelief, calculation. It all flickered too fast to interpret. That's not possible, he said finally. You would have told me. You wouldn't keep something like that from your own father. Why? I asked quietly. So you could take a cut on that too? The words hung there, heavier than the others. My own voice shocked me. Color rose in his face. I have always, you have always looked at me and seen a tool, I said. A reflection. Either I made you look good, or I made you look bad, and you used every compliment and every joke accordingly. When I made something you could profit from, you stepped in. When I broke under the weight of that, you stepped back and called me weak. When I scraped myself back together and tried again, you weren't there to see it. You were too busy polishing your story. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The room felt like a jury box. And here's the thing, I said, my voice low. For years, I swallowed it. I believed you. I thought I was the problem. I played the role, the struggling son, the one who never quite made it. I let you define me because I wanted you to be proud so badly it hurt. My throat tightened. I forced the words through. But I'm done, I said. This is the last time you get to tell a room who I am without me answering back. I looked around co-workers I vaguely recognized, neighbors, extended family members, even my niece and nephew staring wide-eyed from the kids' table. You want to keep telling the story of the self-made man who pulled himself up and had to drag his disappointing son behind him? I asked, go ahead, but you're going to have to start telling the whole story. The one where you used his work to pad your retirement accounts. The one where you never once apologized. The one where, on the night you celebrated your legacy, you chose to humiliate him publicly for a laugh. Maya's hand slid into mine. I realized at some point I'd started shaking. My father's jaw worked. You are ungrateful, he said finally, his voice trembling with anger. Everything I've done for this family, and this is what you bring to my retirement dinner? Accusations? Lies? You want to shame me in front of my colleagues with fairy tales about being some tech mogul? He gestured around. You all hear this? He asked, appealing to the room. You see what happens when children are told they're special every minute of the day? They grow up and spit in your face. Dad, Michael said, looking rattled now. Maybe we should take this offline. This isn't... Quiet, my father snapped. Michael shut his mouth, stunned. You think money makes you a man? Dad continued, pinning me with a stare. You think sitting behind a computer, playing with code, makes you worth something? I built this life with my bare hands. I put food on this table, a roof over your head. You would have nothing without me. It was the oldest argument he had, the one he used when everything else failed. I gave you life, you owe me everything. I stared back at him. I used to believe that, I said, until I realized that providing isn't the same thing as owning. A murmur ran through the room. He sneered. You're acting like you're better than this family now, like you've somehow risen above us. What, because you got lucky on some app and again on some company? You're the same lazy soft boy you've always been. Dressing it up in money doesn't change that. Maya stepped forward, microphone still in her hand. You know what's wild, Richard? She said. Even if he hadn't succeeded, even if he were broke right now, nothing about what you did tonight would be okay. You realize that, right? This isn't about his net worth. It's about yours. The word landed differently. What did you say? He asked sharply. Your net worth, she repeated. Not the number on your bank account, the number on your soul. A few people shifted uncomfortably, as if she'd said something indecent. Others nodded almost imperceptibly. She turned to the room. I'm not telling you all this to prove that Ethan's not a failure, she said. He never was. He didn't need to be rich to be worthy. I'm telling you because you're all here celebrating a man whose story you think you know. And he just used this platform this night to casually destroy someone he claims to love. And when that someone and his wife push back with facts, his response is to double down and call him ungrateful. Her eyes were shiny now. If that's your hero, she said quietly, I think you need better stories. The silence was almost suffocating. My mother stood up slowly. Richard, she said, her voice unsteady. Did you really take money behind his back? He stared at her like her questioning him was the worst betrayal of the night. Not you too, he said. You knew I was involved. I told you. You told me you were helping him, she whispered. You didn't tell me you were benefiting. I earned that, he shot back. I guided him. I gave him credibility. Where do you think those investors came from? They weren't knocking on the door of some nobody coder. And you didn't think he deserved a share in that ongoing success? She asked, her voice rising. He was the one who built it. So what? He snapped. Life is unfair. I taught him that early. Maybe if he had stuck around, he would have benefited more. He left. He quit. Maya's jaw clenched. You pushed him out, she said. You told him he was dragging the team down, that the grown-ups would handle it. You told him to focus on something more appropriate. You told him to get a real job. You still use those exact phrases, by the way. You know how I know? I've heard you. He ignored her, eyes blazing. This is bullshit, he said. All of it. You want to believe your husband is some secret success story you weren't told about? Fine. Show me the proof. Maya looked at me. I met her gaze. My heart thudded. For years I'd avoided this moment. I had my reasons: safety, distance, a desire to build something that was truly mine, untouched by his hands. But the truth was, a part of me had also wanted to hold on to the idea that one day I'd choose the right moment to tell him, and he'd finally look at me with pride instead of impatience. That fantasy died the moment he said, "Somebody has to keep the sofa warm." I reached into my inner pocket and pulled out an envelope. I placed it on the table in front of him. What's that supposed to be? He asked, not touching it. Open it, I said. He glared at me, then at Maya, then snatched the envelope and tore it open with unnecessary violence. He pulled out the sheaf of papers inside. The company logo was in the top corner. Legal language filled the first page in dense paragraphs. His eyes skimmed, then narrowed. This, he said, baffled. This is an offer, I said, from Luminarch's board of directors. To you, he looked up sharply. Why would... Read it, I said. His mouth tightened. He read. I watched the color drain from his face. It was the offer I'd asked the board to draft and send to my address instead of his. For months, I'd wrestled with what to do with it. Tearing it up had been tempting. So had signing it on his behalf and redirecting the payout somewhere he'd never find. In the end, I had chosen this. He finished the first page. His eyes darted to the second, then the third. His hands trembled slightly. This says, he began, voice shaking. It says I cut in because I knew exactly what it said. That in recognition of your early involvement in my first company, a fact they know about only because I told them, we're offering you a one-time payout equivalent to what your consulting arrangement has earned you all these years, clean, legal, above board. It also offers you the option to become a public ambassador for Luminarch with a small stipend, if you wanted. A way to attach your name to something you actually helped build, instead of just riding its coattails in secret. I swallowed, my throat tight. I drafted it 6 months ago, I said. Before this dinner, before your speech, before any of this. I was going to give it to you tonight, privately, as a surprise, as a way of saying, I'm okay. You don't have to worry about me. And thank you, in your own messed up way, for introducing me to that world. A few people gasped. My mother covered her mouth. But then you stood up here, I said, my voice cracking, and you told everyone that I'm a joke, that I'm a failure, that you can't win them all. And I realized something I should have understood years ago. I looked him dead in the eye. You don't worry about me, I said. You worry about how I make you look. The pages in his hands fluttered. His knuckles were white. I thought, I continued, that giving you that offer would heal something, prove something, maybe even rewrite a little of our story. But now I see that the only story that's going to change tonight is mine. I reached out. Slowly, deliberately, I took the offer back from his hands. His eyes widened. What are you doing? He demanded. I'm declining it, I said. On your behalf. The board doesn't know you're getting this. They left it up to me. They trusted me. Funny thing about trust. I folded the papers in half. This was a gift, I said. I don't owe it to you. Not after what you did back then, and especially not after what you did tonight. He lunged forward, grabbing for the papers. You can't do that, he snarled. That's my... I stepped back, out of reach. It's not, I said softly. Nothing in here legally obligates me to give you anything. I wanted to. out of some twisted sense of loyalty, out of some lingering hope that if I gave you more, you'd finally stop taking. I held the folded offer up. And I'm done, I said. No more. I tore it in half, then in half again, and again until it was confetti. Each rip echoed louder than the last. Gas rippled around the room. My mother sank slowly back into her chair, like her strings had been cut. Caroline's eyes were wide, shining with something like awe and grief all tangled together. Michael looked like someone had smacked him with a briefcase. My father stared at the torn papers, his face mottled. "You idiot," he hissed. "Do you have any idea how much that was worth?" "Yes," I said. "Down to the cent." Silence. "And," he demanded, "and I'm still richer than you," I said quietly. His head snapped up. The words were petty small. I knew that, but they were also true. And in that moment, after a lifetime of being measured and weighed and found wanting in his eyes, they tasted sweeter than I was proud of. When the deal closed, I said, I cleared enough too. Pay off our house, set up college funds for our kids, not that you asked if we wanted any, and invest in a portfolio that, as of yesterday, passed your entire retirement account in value. Yes, I know how much is in your accounts. No, I didn't hack anything illegal. You talk too loudly on the phone and leave your statements on the kitchen table. A few people laughed, stunned. I also put a chunk aside, I added, in a fund I'd labeled Dad, in case you needed anything down the line. Medical expenses, emergencies. I was prepared, despite everything, to take care of you. His expression shifted. For the first time tonight, something like vulnerability flickered there. It did something to me I wasn't ready for. But tonight, I said, you made it very clear you don't see me as someone capable of taking care of anything. You see me as a punchline, and I'm not building my future around someone who can't see the man standing in front of him, only the boy he liked having power over. I swallowed, the words coming slower now, heavier. So here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm not going to cut you off from my life entirely. I know what that does to a person. I'm not interested in repeating cycles. But I am cutting you off from my money, from my guilt, from my obligation to make your story prettier at the expense of my own. I looked around the room one last time, at the colleagues, the neighbors, the twisted faces of shock and curiosity. And all of you, I said, can decide for yourselves which version of this man you want to keep celebrating. I set the torn pieces of the offer on the table. Enjoy your retirement dinner, I said to my father. Then I took Maya's hand. We're done here, I murmured. She squeezed back. We are, she agreed. We turned to leave. Behind me, I heard my father sputter. If you walk out that door, he shouted, don't expect a cent from me, you or your kids. I stopped. Slowly, I turned back. Dad, I said, voice soft but caring, I never expected a cent from you. I let that sink in. That's the difference between us, I said. You think money is what makes you worth something. I thought your love was worth everything. Turns out I was wrong on both counts. Something broke in his eyes then. Just for a second. But it was there. I faced the room one last time. I'm done being the family failure, I said. I'm not your cautionary tale. I'm not your foil. I'm not your project. I'm just me. And that's enough. It always was. Then I walked out of the room, Maya at my side, leaving behind the echoes of a story that had finally, irrevocably, begun to change. When the door to the private dining room closed behind us, the noise didn't stop. It just muffled into a dull roar, like the ocean behind a wall. I could still feel the weight of all those eyes on my back, even though none of them could see me anymore. Maya didn't let go of my hand until we were in the elevator. Even then, she didn't step away. She just slid closer, rested her forehead against my shoulder, and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for an hour. Are you okay? She asked. It was such a simple question for such a complicated moment. I don't know, I said honestly. My voice sounded hoarse. I feel wired and sick and relieved and like I might throw up. That tracks, she said softly. We watched the floor numbers light up. 20, 19, 18. You didn't have to do that, I said at last. That was That was nuclear. She pulled back enough to look at me. Her eyes were still bright, but there was no regret there. None. Yes, I did, she said. I've watched that man grind you down in front of an audience for 10 years. I've watched you laugh along because it's easier that way. I've watched you shrink yourself every time his name comes up. He humiliated you on purpose. Again. He picked that exact moment, his night, his stage, to drag you under for the last time. She shook her head. No, I was done letting that happen. I was supposed to give him that offer tonight, I said. Privately, at dessert. I had this whole thing imagined, where he'd be surprised, then proud, then we'd... I stopped. I didn't even know how to finish that sentence. Fix it, she supplied gently. Rewrite the past. Yeah. I stared at the closed doors. I'm not sure if I just burned a bridge or set a house on fire. Babe, she said, that house has been condemned for a long time. The elevator dinged at the lobby. The doors slid open. A couple in formal wear waited to get in. They glanced at us politely, unaware that the top floor had just turned into a war zone. We walked through the lobby in silence, out into the humid night. The city lights reflected off cars and glass and puddles. Everything looked overexposed. We reached the car. I unlocked it and sat behind the wheel, but my hand stayed on my lap instead of the steering wheel. You want me to drive? Maya asked. I'm not sure I should be allowed near heavy machinery right now, I admitted. She nodded and held out her hand for the keys. We traded places. As she pulled out of the parking garage, she glanced at me. You were incredible in there. I snorted. I tore up a large check and made my father my enemy in front of his entire career network. That's one definition of incredible. Ethan, she said, you told the truth. You took yourself back. You defended your work, your name, your life. That's not making an enemy. That's ending a hostage situation. I let my head fall back against the seat. He's going to hate me. He already did, she said quietly. He just called it love so you'd accept it. That hurt in a way that felt clean. I watched the city blur by as we drove home. Billboards, traffic lights, storefronts still open late. Somewhere out there, people were laughing over drinks, scrolling on their phones, falling asleep in front of the TV. My father's version of me, failure, couch ornament, wasted potential, was still alive in dozens of heads, but something had shifted. A fault line had cracked. You know what's coming, I said eventually. Group chats, phone calls, the how could you do that to your own father speeches. Probably, she agreed, but not from everyone. We pulled into our driveway. The house looked small and safe, and suddenly very far away from the glass tower and the white tablecloths. Maya turned off the engine, but didn't move to get out yet. I need to ask you something, she said. My stomach clenched. Okay. Are you going to regret anything you said in there? She asked. Not the facts. You told the truth. But the line in the sand, the money, the fund. I thought about the torn offer, the ripped paper like snow on a linen tablecloth. No, I said slowly. If I'd given him that money, he would have turned it into another story where he saved me. Where his golden years were gilded by his generosity, he would have used it to buy more people, more validation. And I would have stayed hooked, financially, emotionally, forever. So what do you regret? She asked quietly. I stared at the house, our house, the windows, the chipped step, the porch light I still hadn't replaced. That I didn't walk out sooner, I said. She reached across the console and squeezed my hand. Then tonight wasn't a disaster, she said. It was late, but it wasn't nothing. We went inside. The house smelled like us. Detergent, books, a faint hint of the curry Maya had cooked earlier in the week. Normal life waited in the form of an overflowing laundry basket and a pile of unopened mail. I kicked off my shoes and stood in the hallway, suddenly exhausted. You want tea? She asked, heading toward the kitchen. Please, I said, and maybe something stronger mixed in, if we have it. We did. She handed me a mug with steam curling from it and a not-so-subtle scent of whiskey. I took a sip. It burned all the way down. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I stared at it like it might bite me. You don't have to look at it tonight, Maya said. Let them marinate. I know, I said, but I kind of want to see which flavor of outrage we're dealing with. I pulled the phone out. 22 missed messages, 14 in the Hale family group chat, a few from unknown numbers, probably Dad's colleagues whose business cards I'd never wanted. I opened the family chat. Hale family. Michael, are you kidding me, Ethan? Mom, we will discuss this tomorrow. Caroline. Holy shit, Mom. Caroline. Language. Cousin Jenna. Is Uncle Richard okay? He looked like he was going to have a stroke. Michael. You humiliated him in front of his colleagues. How could you let your wife talk to him like that? Mom. This is not the place for this. Caroline. Actually, this is exactly the place for this, Mom. We just watched Dad verbally gut Ethan again in public. Michael. It was a joke. We all know how Dad is. Ethan could have laughed it off and pulled him aside later. Caroline. Or he could not. Michael. You don't blow up a man's retirement dinner. Caroline. He blew up Ethan's dignity. Again. Michael. Not helping Caro. Mom. Stop, everyone. Please. There was a text from my mother directly. Mom, come to the house at 11 tomorrow. Alone. We need to talk. There it was, the summons. Another text popped up as I watched. Caroline. Ethan, call me when you get home. I smiled despite everything. She's on your side, Maya said, reading over my shoulder. Caroline's on the side of whatever creates the most chaos, I said, but it came out fond. Sometimes that happens to align with justice. Are you going tomorrow? She asked. I stared at Mom's message. I think I have to, I said. If I don't, the narrative writes itself. Ethan throws tantrum, refuses to face the music. I rub my temples. I'm so tired of narratives. Then go, she said. But go for you, not for their script. If it starts turning into the Richard redemption hour, you leave. I nodded. We sat on the couch, not talking, sipping our drinks while some mindless show played on mute in the background. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed with another message. People processing, picking sides, or just rubbernecking. At some point, I put it face down on the table. Will you come with me? I asked after a while. To the house, she said. Your mom said alone. My mom always says thing, I said. You're my wife. If they want to talk about what happened tonight, they're talking about both of us. I'm done handing you over as scapegoat too. She smiled slightly. Then yes, I'll come. We went to bed late. I lay awake in the dark long after Maya's breathing had evened out. My brain replayed the evening on a loop. The microphone in my wife's hand. The look on my father's face when I took the offer back. The fragile break in his eyes when I mentioned the fund I'd planned for him. Somewhere underneath my anger, I could feel grief, heavy and old. It had been there for years, layered under resentment like sediment. Tonight had just shaken the ground enough to bring it closer to the surface. I finally drifted off near dawn. We arrived at my parents' house the next morning at 10:58. The drive there felt shorter than usual. Maybe adrenaline bends time. The neighborhood looked exactly the same as it had my entire life. Same trimmed hedges, same overly polite mailboxes, same driveways with cars that all came from the same three brands. The Hale house sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, bigger than the others by exactly enough inches to be noticeable. There it is, I said. The museum of my childhood. Maya squeezed my knee. You don't have to go in, she reminded me. We can sit here and eat drive-through and talk trash instead. It'll be therapeutic. I laughed, even though my stomach hurt. Tempting. We got out of the car. Mom opened the door before we had a chance to knock. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was slightly frizzed and she was still in her robe. Come in, she said briskly, stepping aside. We did. The house smelled like coffee, lemon cleaner, and something burnt under the cover of a scented candle. My father was in his usual spot at the kitchen table, a mug in front of him, yesterday's paper folded untouched. He was wearing a t-shirt instead of a button-down. Somehow that made him look older. Michael sat at the counter, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened like he was midway through a crisis at work. Caroline was perched on the counter itself, eating dry cereal from the box. I frowned. So, your definition of alone is plus half the family, I said to Mom. I didn't tell them the message was private. she said tightly. They just came. Caroline hopped off the counter and hugged me. How does it feel, she whispered in my ear, to drop the mic and walk out like a Netflix protagonist? Like I'm going to throw up on your shoes, I whispered back. She grinned and moved to hug Maya. You're my hero, she murmured. You know that, right? I'll take that, Maya replied. Michael cleared his throat. We need to talk, he said, echoing my mother's text. Dad didn't look at us. He stared at the table like the wood grain had personally offended him. Mom gestured to the chairs. Sit, she said. I pulled out a chair from Maya and sat beside her. The kitchen felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I felt bigger. Nobody spoke. For a moment, finally Mom sighed. Last night was... She searched for a word, failed and settled on. A lot. That's one way to put it, Michael muttered. Caroline rolled her eyes. He deserved it, she said. Caroline, Mom snapped. What? Caroline said. He did. Dad's been using Ethan as a punching bag for years. Everybody knows it. Dad flinched slightly. It was tiny, but I saw it. We're not here to gang up on anyone, Mom said, voice tight. We're here to understand what happened and figure out where we go from here. Where we go from here, Michael said, leaning forward, is you apologize to Dad, Ethan. Publicly. To his friends. To the company people. You explained that you were emotional, that Maya spoke out of turn, that the money stuff was a misunderstanding. My body went cold. Maya sat up straighter. Excuse me? Michael continued as if she hadn't spoken. You know how people are. They'll remember the scene more than the facts. We can fix that spin it as a family argument that got out of hand. But we have to act fast. Dad's reputation is still intact, I cut in. He spent 40 years building it. One dinner isn't going to undo that. You'd be surprised, Michael said. You attacked his ethics. That app story. Do you realize how bad that sounds if anyone takes you seriously? Taking side money, screwing over his own kid. You basically accused him of fraud in front of half the senior leadership team. I didn't accuse him of fraud, I said. I described exactly what happened. There was nothing illegal about it, just immoral. Legal, illegal. Do you think that distinction matters to gossip? Michael snapped. You just gave ammo to every person who ever resented Dad, and by extension, this family. This family, Caroline said slowly, is not a company, Mike. There is no brand to manage, he glared at her. It sure feels like I've been doing PR for all of you for years, he said. So yeah, actually, there is a brand. Mom rubbed her temples. Enough, she said. Please. Ethan, is what Maya said true? About the app? The consulting? The deal? She looked at me with something raw in her eyes, like she didn't actually want the answer. Yes, I said. She didn't even say all of it. She said enough, Dad muttered. Maya glanced at him. For once, we agree. Mom's voice shook. Richard, how could you not tell me that you took money from your own son's company? He finally looked up. I told you I was helping him, he snapped. I told you the investors insisted on a senior advisor, that they wanted someone with experience attached. I didn't hide that. You hid the part where you negotiated an ongoing stake for yourself, I said. You told me that option was off the table, that they'd only do a lump sum. He shot me a look. You remember it the way you want to remember it. No, I said quietly. I remember it the way it was. I have emails, Dad. That landed. He stiffened. I've seen them, Maya added. The ones where you tell the investors Ethan is brilliant but not practical. The ones where you call him unstable for being upset about being cut out of the final negotiation. The ones where you agree to the consulting stake and tell them not to burden Ethan with the details because he's emotional. Mom's face went pale. Richard, she whispered. He slammed his palm on the table. Enough, he barked. I am not going to sit here and be tried in my own kitchen like a criminal. I did what I thought was best at the time. He was drowning. I threw him a rope. And then charged him for the rope forever, Caroline said dryly. Shut up, Caroline, he snapped. She straightened. No, she said. I'm done shutting up. She looked at me. I didn't know, she said, about any of that. I just knew you were different after that whole mess, quieter, sadder. I thought you were just beating yourself up. I was, I said. There was plenty to beat myself up about. I let him do it. I signed the papers. I told myself I should be grateful I got anything. You should be grateful, Dad muttered. Plenty of people fail and get nothing. Richard, Mom said, a note of desperation in her voice. Please, stop. He fell silent, jaw tight. Mom turned to me. And this Luminarch, she said carefully, that's all true as well? The stock, the sale, the money? Yes, I said. Every word. Michael frowned. If it's such a big deal, he said, why the hell haven't we heard about it? Why would you hide something like that from your own family? Because of this, I said, gesturing between us. Because every time I tried to talk about anything I cared about, it turned into a referendum on my choices. Because you'd immediately compare it to Dad's career or your trajectory. Because the last time I got excited about something, Dad turned it into his retirement cushion. That is extremely unfair, Dad snapped. You think I needed your app money to retire? Look around you, Ethan. Do you think this house was built on your scraps? I think you liked having more, I said, and I think you were willing to get it however you could, including leveraging a son who still worshipped you. He flinched. And for the record, I added, I didn't hide Luminarch from all of you, I tried to tell you. Remember that dinner 2 years ago? The one where I said I had a big project finally taking off? You changed the subject to congratulations on Michael's promotion. I texted you a link to an article about our first big client, Mom. You wrote back, nice, dear, and then sent a recipe. She winced. Her shoulders sagged. I thought it was just one of your projects. Exactly, I said softly. My projects, background noise, until they fail. Then they become cautionary tales. Silence. And the money? Michael asked, his tone still edged but different now, hungrier. You weren't exaggerating last night. I wish I were, I said tiredly. It would make this simpler. How much? He pressed. Exactly. Michael, Maya said sharply. What? He demanded. We're all dancing around it, and he threw around 8 figures like it was nothing. I looked at him for a long moment. My point last night wasn't, I'm rich now, I said. It was, I'm not powerless anymore. How much? He repeated. Maya put her hand on my arm. I could feel the tension in her fingers. I sighed. After taxes, I said, and after the initial investments, I'm sitting on just under 15 million in liquid and semi-liquid assets. More if you count the paper value of the stock that hasn't vested yet. The room inhaled as one. 15 million. It sounded obscene out loud. It felt obscene sometimes in my head, especially knowing where some of that work had started, how much blood had gone into it. Michael's jaw dropped. You're joking, he said. No, I said. His eyes flicked between me and Dad. So, you're what? Rich now? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. According to the internet's definitions, yeah. Upper tier of the top 1%. Congratulations. The family failure is a cliché tech bro statistic. Caroline whistled low. Holy shit, she said. You could literally buy Dad's car just to set it on fire. Caroline, Mom snapped again, but her voice lacked energy. Dad stared at me like he'd never seen me before. The fund, he said, voice rough. You mentioned a fund. I did, I said. That was real? He asked. There was something raw there now. You set money aside for me? I swallowed. Yes, I said. I did. Several $100,000. Enough to cover any medical emergencies or lifestyle changes. Enough to make sure you never worried about money again. And you tore it up, he said. No, I said. I tore up the extra offer. From the company. The fund is still sitting where I left it. His eyes flickered with hope. And I'm moving it, I added quietly. Out of your reach, into something else. The hope died. What gives you the right? He began. What gave you the right? I asked more sharply than I'd intended. To take that consulting agreement. To tell those investors I was unstable. To sit in there last night and talk about me like I'm a lazy punchline. You want to talk about rights? Let's start there. He pushed back from the table, standing abruptly. You think money makes you better than us, he said. You're lording it over this family, waving it in our faces, dangling it like a carrot. I stood too. No, I said. I think money makes me safe from you. That's not the same thing. Maya rose beside me. Caroline stayed seated but leaned forward, rapt. Michael looked like someone who had just realized the game had changed and didn't know the new rules yet. Mom's eyes were wet. Ethan, she said, we didn't know. If we had known. What? I asked. Would you have treated me better? Spoken to me with more respect? Told Dad to stop making those jokes? Yes, she said without hesitation. The honesty in that answer hurt more than if she'd lied. That's the problem, I said softly. You shouldn't need to know my net worth to treat me like a human being. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm not saying you didn't love me, I added quickly. I know you did. Do. In your way. But you let him set the tone. Every single time. You let him humiliate me as long as he did it with a smile and called it truth. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. You think it was easy for me, she snapped. You think I didn't want to jump in? Do you have any idea what it's like living with a man like that for 40 years? Picking your battles, doing damage control, begging him to go easy, getting called hysterical for intervening? Mom, Caroline said softly. I tried, she said, voice breaking. You never saw it. He did it when you weren't around. He told me to let him be a father. He said if I kept coddling you, you'd never toughen up. I didn't need toughening, I said. I needed support. She closed her eyes. And you, I said, tipping my chin at Michael, laughed along because it made you feel safer. As long as I was the target, you didn't have to be. He bristled. That's not fair, he said. I got plenty of pressure too. I just handled it. I did what needed to be done. I know, I said. And you did it well. I'm not saying you didn't work hard. I'm saying you let Dad build you up by tearing me down, and you never once said, hey, maybe we don't need to compare my brother to a couch in front of the entire extended family. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The defensiveness in his eyes warred with something else. Shame, maybe. Caroline hopped off the counter. I'm with Ethan, she said, in case that wasn't obvious. Dad, you've been a tyrant with a smile for as long as I can remember. Mike, you've been his PR guy. Mom, you've been his damage control department. And Ethan, she looked at me. You've been his scapegoat, she finished. I've been the family mess, sure, but even my mess got spun as cute or artistic. Yours was always more useful broken. The kitchen went absolutely still. I didn't call you here to be attacked, Dad said. His voice wobbled slightly. I called you here so we could fix this. You didn't call anyone, I reminded him. Mom did. You sat at that table and waited for us like a king summoning his problematic subjects. He glared, don't put words in my mouth. You don't need help with that, I said. You're very good at it yourself. Maya touched my arm lightly. You're at a 12, she murmured. I know he drags you there, but remember what you want from this. I took a breath. In. Out. What did I want from this? Not an apology. Not really, I'd craved one for years. But now it felt too small. I wanted something bigger. The freedom to stop needing anything from him at all. I'm not here to fix anything, I said finally. Not on your terms. I'm here to tell you what's changing. Dad barked a humorless laugh. You don't get to dictate the terms of this family, Ethan, he said. You're still my son. That's the thing, I said. I am, and nothing you do can change that. But father is a role you're no longer auditioning for. You had 40 years to shape it. I'm just done giving you director's notes on my life, he sneered. And what does that mean in practical terms? You're cutting us off? Is that the threat? No, I said. Not exactly. I looked at all of them, the people who had defined my existence for so long. I'm not cutting you off, I said. I'm cutting myself free. They stared at me, waiting. No more coming to every event where I'm the designated punchline, I said. No more answering group chats where my career is a running joke. No more financial secrets, on my end or yours. I'll be polite. I'll show up for major emergencies. I'll be an uncle to the kids. But I won't be this version of Ethan anymore. The one who sits quietly while you all treat my life like a cautionary PowerPoint slide. Mom frowned. That's dramatic, she said weakly. So was last night, I replied. And the money? Michael pressed. You keep talking about not letting us tie your worth to it, but it's there. 15 million. Are you just sitting on that? Do you have a plan? Or are you going to burn it up to prove a point? There it was. The envy, the suspicion, the implicit question. Are you responsible enough for it? Are you going to waste what I think I deserve? I almost smiled. Yes, I said. I do have a plan. I took a breath. Half of it, I said, is locked in instruments that will give us a comfortable life, long-term stability, and options. Maya and I decided that's our baseline. No more scrambling for rent, no more wondering what happens if one of us gets sick. Maya nodded. We're not interested in mansions and sports cars, she said. We'd like a slightly bigger kitchen and maybe a dishwasher that doesn't sound like it's dying. But that's about it, Caroline snorted. Honestly, Mood. The other half, I went on, is going to be redistributed. Michael's eyes sharpened. To who? He asked. I met his gaze and held it. Not to Dad, I said. And not to this family as a group. His face froze. Excuse me? You all have expectations, I said. That's not your fault. It's how you were raised. Dad has always made it clear that his success would trickle down to us. College funds, house down payments, extra help when needed. You've all counted on that in one way or another. I looked at my father. And you've used that as leverage, I said. Every criticism came with a side plate of, after all I've done for you, and this will all be yours someday. He didn't deny it. I'm not interested in continuing that dynamic, I said. Not with my money. Michael's voice turned stiff and cold. So what, you're cutting us out, he said. You'd rather give your money to strangers? It's not about strangers, I said. It's about not rewarding behavior that hurts me. He laughed disbelievingly. We're your family. Exactly, I said. Which is why I expected more from you, and why it hurts more when you treat me like a joke. Mom looked stricken. Ethan, we didn't. Yes, you did, I said gently. Maybe not always consciously, but you did. Caroline folded her arms. I don't want your money, she said. I mean, if you ever want to fund my gallery, I won't say no, but you know what I mean. I just want a front row seat to Dad, realizing he's not the only big man in the room anymore. Caroline, Mom sighed. Please. What? Caroline shrugged. You all are thinking it. Michael's jaw clenched. Do you have any idea how entitled you sound right now, Ethan? He said. You get one big payday and suddenly you're the arbiter of who deserves what in this family. Yes, I said simply. I do. Because it's my money, his nostrils flared. You act like we haven't worked, he snapped. I've busted my ass too. I've put in the hours. I've dealt with Dad's expectations since I was 12. You think I've just been sitting in a fancy office sipping lattes? Of course not, I said. I've never thought you didn't work hard, but you've also had a safety net I didn't. An assumption that if something went wrong, Dad would take care of it. That one day the house at the end of the cul-de-sac would be yours to split, that the accounts would be there, that your kids' college funds were a given. So now what, he demanded. You swoop in as the rich brother and punish us? I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm refusing to be another version of Dad. I'm not going to dangle security and approval in front of anyone as a way to control them. He stared at me. You realize that's exactly what you're doing right now, right? Behave or I cut you off. I winced. Fair, I said. That's not the message I want to send. So let me be very clear. You are not entitled to my money. Full stop. No behavior earns it. No good behavior guarantees it. It's mine. I get to choose what to do with it. All I'm saying is, given the choice, I'm prioritizing people and causes that don't actively harm me. I looked at Maya. We've already started setting up a foundation, I said quietly, for kids who want to build things but don't have connections, for kids like I was, who have ideas but no last name that opens doors. Dad snorted. Oh, you're a philanthropist now. I'm trying, I said. We're also looking at scholarships, mentoring programs, small seed funds, things that don't require anyone to worship me to get help. Things that will exist, whether my family approves of me or not. Maya smiled faintly. We're calling it the ARC Fund, she said. It's about changing trajectories and not reenacting the same stories again and again. Mom's eyes filled again. You're giving it away, she whispered. Some of it, I said. Enough to matter. Enough that when I die, my legacy isn't the guy who finally showed up to the Hale narrative with a bigger wallet. That's insane, Michael said. You're being idealistic. You don't understand how fast that money can evaporate. House, kids, healthcare. We've factored all of that in, Maya said. We're not 19. We've had a financial planner practically living in our inbox for months. And they know about this? He demanded. The giving away half? They helped us plan it, I said. They tried to talk us down to 40%. We settled around 45. So it's not quite half. You can relax. He did not relax. Dad's voice cut through. So that's it then? He asked. You come into my house, tell me I'm a terrible father, and announce that you're taking your toys and going to play with strangers instead of your own blood? I looked at him. No, I said, that's not it. I stepped closer to the table. He watched me warily. You keep saying I called you a terrible father, I said. I didn't. I said you hurt me a lot. You did some good things too. You worked hard. You provided. You taught me how systems work. You taught me not to be naive. And whether you meant to or not, you taught me that giving someone everything material while starving them emotionally is its own kind of cruelty. His face tightened. I learned from you, I said. All of it, the good and the bad. And now I'm deciding what I want to carry forward. He swallowed. And that doesn't include us, he said. I didn't say that, I replied. It includes limited contact, clear boundaries, no more. Letting you define me in front of others, no more giving you information you can weaponize, and no more rescues, financial or otherwise, that I don't actively choose. Maya squeezed my hand under the table. And here's the part that's going to sound harsh, I added. But you said you value the truth, so here it is. If you keep talking about me the way you did last night, if you keep telling people I'm a failure, that I'm unstable, that I'm ungrateful, you're going to watch those benefits you've spread around this family dry up. Not because I'm punishing you, because people won't believe you anymore. He frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said, that word is going to get around it already has. Some of your colleagues texted me last night. I took my phone out and slid it across the table. He stared at the screen names. People he respected, people he'd courted. Didn't know that about the app. Sorry that happened. Richard never mentioned you were involved. That's something. You spoke well. I'm rethinking a few things. If you're ever open to giving a talk to our innovation group, let me know you clearly understand more than he ever said. I watched the realization sink in. Your image isn't just yours anymore, and I said. It never was. The people in that room last night saw a man punch down at his own son. Some of them will forget. Some will excuse it, but some won't. And the more you double down on your version of me as a failure, the more they're going to wonder what else you've spun. He sank slowly back into his chair. For the first time, he looked small. I thought, he said, then stopped. What? I asked, softer now. He stared at his hands. I thought toughening you up would help you, he said. The world doesn't care about your feelings. I wanted you to be strong. Tearing someone down in public doesn't make them strong, I said. It makes them afraid to stand at all. His eyes glistened. He blinked hard. That app, he said quietly, you never should have trusted those investors. I trusted you, I said. He flinched. And you were right about one thing, I added. I did need to see how ruthless that world could be. I just wish it hadn't been my father holding the knife. The room was silent. Finally, Mom spoke. Is there any way back? She asked. From this? I thought about it. Yes, I said. But it won't look like what you're imagining. There's no big reconciliation dinner where we pretend none of this happened. There's no, and then Dad apologized and I handed him a check and we all lived happily ever after. Caroline snorted weakly. Too bad, she murmured. Would have been cheaper. Michael shot her a glare. She ignored it. If there's a way back, I said, it's small. It's quiet. It looks like Dad not making me the butt of his next story. It looks like you, Mom, saying, that's enough when he does. It looks like, maybe, someday, him asking me about my work without turning it into a competition. It looks like you, Michael, choosing not to run PR on my emotions. It looks like Caroline not staging a performance piece in the front yard with a banner that says, down with the Hail Patriarchy. Caroline pouted. You're no fun. And it looks like me, I finished, setting boundaries and sticking to them. Even when you all react badly, especially then. Maya leaned her shoulder against mine. Her presence grounded me. So the ball's in our court, Mom said slowly. Yes, I said. For the first time, actually. I pushed my chair back. I've said what I needed to say, I told them. I'm not going to keep repeating it in different ways, hoping it lands. You know the facts. You know how I feel. You know what I'm doing with my life now. The next move is yours. Where are you going? Mom asked, panic flickering. Home, I said. To answer some emails. To work. To talk with Maya about the foundation paperwork. To hang shelves. To live my life. That's it? Michael said incredulously. You drop this grenade and then just leave? Pretty much, I said. That's incredibly self-centered, he spat. Yes, I said. For once my life is centered on myself. Wild concept, I know. I turned to Dad. I don't hate you, I said quietly. In case you were wondering, I have hated the way you treat me. I have hated the stories you tell about me. But you, I just don't want you to have this much power over me anymore. He stared at me. I couldn't read his expression. I reached into my pocket one last time and pulled out another envelope. Smaller. Thinner. This, I said, placing it on the table, is information about the ARC Fund and the other projects we're setting up. Not because I'm asking for your approval, because if someday you meet a kid who reminds you of me, bright, stubborn, not fitting your mold, I want you to have somewhere to send them besides your old lecture script. He looked at the envelope like it might explode. I don't expect you to read it today, I said, or ever, but it's there. I stepped back. Call me when you're ready to talk like we're on the same team, I said, not when you're ready to assign blame. I turned to go. Maya at my side, Caroline hovering like she might follow. Ethan, Dad said suddenly. I paused. He swallowed. The words seemed to fight him. I didn't know. About Luminarch, about the fund, about... He trailed off. I know, I said. He looked lost. For what it's worth, he said, voice rough, I never thought you were stupid. The bar was somewhere in the basement, but I recognized it as an attempt. A clumsy, flailing one. I know, I said again. That was never the problem. We left. Caroline caught up with us in the driveway. Wait, she said, out of breath. I'm coming over later. I want to hear everything. Also, I want to help design the foundation's logo. Maya laughed. You're hired, she said. Michael didn't follow. Neither did Mom. I could feel their eyes on my back through the curtains. Maya and I climbed into the car. She exhaled slowly once the doors shut. That, she said, could have gone so much worse. I let out a half laugh. That is not the scale I was using, but I'll take it. You didn't cave, she said. You didn't apologize for existing. You didn't walk back what you said. I know how hard that is for you in that house. I wanted to, I admitted, at least 3 times. My brain was writing apology emails while my mouth was talking. She reached over and cradled my face in her hands for a moment. I'm proud of you, she said. Not for being rich. For that. My throat tightened. You keep saying that, I said. I'm going to keep saying it, she replied. Until it sounds normal in your head. We drove home. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It unfolded in layers. First came the messages from the retirement dinner crowd. Some were sympathetic, some were neutral. A couple were passive-aggressive in that corporate way. It was unfortunate to see family matters intrude on a professional celebration, but I hope you and your father can work things out. Translation: you made us uncomfortable. Then came the silence from others. People who had been quick to send "Happy Holidays" emails every year suddenly forgot my address. A week later, Dad called. I stared at the screen as it lit up with his name. I let it ring out. He didn't leave a voicemail. He tried again the next day. This time I answered, heart hammering. Hello, I said. It's me, he said gruffly. I can see that, I said. Silence. How are you? He asked. It sounded like the question was in a foreign language. Busy, I said. Working. On your projects, he said. On my company, I corrected. Right. He said. I could hear papers shuffling in the background. Listen, the company offered me a spot on the advisory board. Unpaid, but prestige. I'm thinking of declining. I blinked. Okay, I don't need it, he said. Not really. Retirement is taking more adjusting than I planned, but I'll manage. Just thought you'd want to know that I won't be using that platform. The subtext was clear. I won't be on a stage making those jokes anymore. Thanks for telling me, I said. More silence. I read the envelope, he said finally, about the fund, the scholarships, the projects. And, I asked, bracing. It's good work, he said grudgingly. Important. I almost dropped the phone. Thank you, I said. I recommended you to someone, he added quickly, as if rushing past that moment. One of the directors. They're looking to bring in younger speakers for some innovation series. I mentioned your name. You did? I asked. Yes, he said. I didn't. Tell them you were a couch ornament. A short, surprised laugh escaped me. That's progress, I said. Don't get used to it, he muttered. But I could hear something different in his tone, a crack in the old armor. We didn't solve anything on that call. He didn't apologize, I didn't either. But it was a start, tiny, barely visible, but real. Michael took longer. A month after the dinner, he showed up at my house unannounced on a Sunday afternoon. Maya and I were in sweatpants, knee-deep in foundation paperwork and half-assembled IKEA shelves. I opened the door and stared. Wow, I said. The suburbs have dispatched an emissary. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside. He looked around, taking in the cramped living room, the stacks of cardboard, the whiteboard with scribbles about scholarship criteria. Nice place, where he said. Liar, I replied. He cracked a smile. Okay, it's small, he conceded, but it's cozy. Cozy is real estate code for your knees touch the coffee table from the couch, I said. We're working on it. Maya came out of the kitchen wiping her hands. Hey, she said. You found us. Yeah, he said. He looked uncharacteristically awkward. I brought something. He held up a bakery box. Maya smiled. Bribery, she said. I respect that. Come in. We sat around the coffee table, eating overpriced pastries. No one spoke for a minute. Finally, Michael cleared his throat. I owe you an apology, he said. I blinked. That's not a sentence I expected to hear this decade, I said. He sighed. Don't make it harder, he grumbled. I practiced this in the car. Sorry, I said. Go on. He rubbed the back of his neck. I've been angry, he said, since that night. At you, at Dad, at myself. I kept thinking, why didn't he tell us? Why didn't he trust us? Why does he get to be both the screw-up and the secret millionaire? And every time I thought that, I heard Dad's voice in my head. He made a face. It was gross. Maya nodded. Accurate. I realized, when he went on, that I've spent my whole life trying to be the opposite of you, responsible where you were reckless, predictable where you were erratic, corporate where you were whatever the hell you were. It made me feel safe, useful, chosen. He grimaced at the word. And successful, I added. He shrugged. Yeah, that too. But it also made me a jerk. A lot of the time I let Dad use you as a cautionary tale so I could feel like the success story. He met my eyes. I'm sorry for that, for last night, for pushing you to apologize to him instead of listening to why you were done. Something in my chest loosened. Thank you, I said quietly. That means more than you think. He exhaled. I'm still jealous as hell, he admitted. I've been grinding it out for years, and you're out here building companies and foundations and walking away from six-figure checks like it's nothing. It wasn't nothing, I said. It hurt. A lot. I spent 2 days after that dinner wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. Then I remembered I'd built an entire company from scratch. Tearing up some paper didn't erase that. He nodded slowly. I get it, he said. I mean, I don't, not fully, but I'm trying. That's all I'm asking, I said. He glanced at the whiteboard. You're really doing this? He asked. The scholarships? Yeah, I said. We just finalized the structure. We're starting small. 5 kids the first year, maybe more later. He hesitated. Can I help? He asked. Not financially, he added quickly. I mean, I could, but I know you don't want this to turn into a family thing. I mean with the structure. I know corporate compliance pretty well. We do a lot of reviewing programs like this for tax and legal issues. I could look over your plans. Make sure you're not accidentally committing to something that bites you in 5 years. I stared. You want to do my paperwork? I said. He rolled his eyes. Don't make it sound like I'm offering to fix your printer, he said. This is actually my skill set. You're building something. I can help protect it if you want. Emotion hit me unexpectedly hard. Yeah, I said. I want. He nodded, looking relieved. Cool, he said. Send me whatever you have. We'll go through it together. Maya smiled. Look at that, she said. Hail, brothers. One builds the thing, one fights the red tape. I can make merch, Caroline said from the doorway. We turned. She was leaning against the frame, holding iced coffee. How long have you been listening? I asked. Long enough to know this is my cue, she said. You nerds handle the systems, I handle the aesthetics. Michael groaned. I should have known this would turn into a family startup. It's not, I said quickly. I want this to be bigger than us. It can be both, Maya said. You can build something that isn't just another branch of the Hale dynasty and still let your siblings use their skills to help as long as the power dynamics are different. I looked at all of them. My brother with his rolled up sleeves, my sister with her purple hair, my wife with her steady eyes. This was not the family I'd grown up in. It was the same people, but shifted somehow, tilted into a new angle by one loud, painful night. I realized I could choose which version to invest in. Okay, I said. Let's do it. Michael, I'll send you the current bylaws. Caroline, you can start sketching logo ideas. Maya, you and I will finish drafting the application process, and no one tells Dad until it's already up and running. Caroline grinned. Chaos with a plan, she said. My favorite. Michael shook his head. Dad's going to freak out when he finds out we're all working on this without him. He'll survive, and I said. He's been the center of the story for a long time. He can handle being a side character for once. Maya leaned into me. So, she said quietly, how does it feel to have your very rich identity out in the open now? I hadn't thought about it. Less different than I thought, I said. But lighter, like I'm not holding my breath anymore. You know they're still going to talk, she said. Extended family, neighbors, people from last night. Sure, I said. But now when they say Ethan, the failure, it'll just sound wrong, like they're reading from an outdated script. And your dad? She asked. I looked toward the window. Sunlight slanted across the floor. In the distance, I could hear kids playing, someone mowing a lawn, the low buzz of normal life. He'll either rewrite his story, I said, or keep telling the same one while fewer and fewer people listen. And you? She asked. I smiled. I've got other stories to write, I said. The day the ARC Fund website went live, the only person who noticed immediately was Caroline. I am a genius, she announced over FaceTime, turning her phone around so we could see the homepage on her monitor. Behold, branding. It looked good, clean. Dark navy background, a simple orbital logo, our tagline in crisp white, ARCFUND. Because some kids don't need a handout. They just need a door that actually opens. Damn, I said. It's like our therapy sessions became a landing page. You're welcome, she said. You'll get an invoice for that line. Maya leaned over my shoulder, smiling. It's perfect, she said. It sounds like you, Ethan. Not like another corporate diversity brochure. I exhaled slowly. Okay, I said. Let's flip the switch. We pushed the site live. Nothing exploded. The internet didn't catch fire. Our bank account didn't drain. The world just kept going. Somewhere in that flow, 5 kids I hadn't met yet would eventually click a button and send us their stories. I didn't realize how much I'd been bracing for impact until I felt my shoulders drop. There, Maya said quietly. It exists. It's real. The first application pinged my inbox 3 days later. A 17-year-old from a neighborhood I knew too well. Code samples attached a wobbly essay about wanting to build something that proves people like me aren't just statistics. My chest hurt reading it. This, I told Maya that night, tapping the printed pages on our kitchen table, is what I want the money to do. She nodded. Then that's what it'll do. Dad called again a week after the site launched. I saw the thing, he said without preamble. The thing? I asked even though I knew. The fund your mother showed me the article. They did a whole piece. Photo of you in that stupid t-shirt. Why can't you wear a proper shirt in these things? I smiled despite myself. It's called personal branding. It makes you look like you own a skateboard, he grumbled. Better than looking like I own a coffin, I said. What did you think of the article? He was quiet for a moment. They called you serial entrepreneur and philanthropist, he said. That's something. Did that bother you? I asked. He snorted. I've been called worse. I waited. It was good, he said finally. The part about kids without connections. The bit about not tying access to polished narratives. He hesitated. Sounded like a dig at me? If the shoe fits, I said lightly. He exhaled through his nose. They mentioned the first company too, he said, by name, and the consulting arrangement. Yeah, I said. I told them not to. They did anyway. Journalists like ARCs. Another pause. I didn't protect you there, he said abruptly. With that app. I told myself I was, but I wasn't. I saw something I could use and I used it. You got hurt. That wasn't what a father should do. I went very still. The words were clumsy, but they were the closest thing to an admission I'd ever heard from him. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. Don't go making a Hallmark movie out of it, he snapped. I'm not about to start crying into a camera. I know, I said. Believe me, nobody wants that. He cleared his throat. There's another thing, he said, about the innovation series. The what? My old company, he said. They do this future of work thing now. Panels, talks, buzzwords. They asked me to host a session. I suggested you instead. I blinked. You what? I'm retired, he grumbled. They need new blood. And you clearly know what you're doing with this tech nonsense. Figure you could use the practice talking to rooms full of people without yelling at your father. I laughed, startled. I don't yell, I said. I strongly project. Whatever, he said. They'll send you an email. Okay, I said slowly. I'll think about it. Don't think too long, he said. Opportunities don't wait. The irony of him saying that almost made me dizzy. I know, I said. You taught me that. He hung up without a goodbye. It was weirdly progress. The email came that afternoon. Hi, Ethan. Richard speaks very highly of you and your work. I snorted out loud at that line. Maya raised an eyebrow. I think we just entered an alternate universe, I said, tossing her my phone. She read the invitation. Do you want to do it? She asked. Part of me wants to tell them to shove it, I admitted. Another part of me thinks this is exactly the kind of room I should be in. For the kids we're helping, if nothing else. She nodded. Then do it on your terms, she said. Don't sell them the bootstraps fantasy. Tell the truth. So I said yes. 3 weeks later, I stepped into the same building my father had worked in for 40 years. The lobby smelled like coffee and polished ambition, security badges clipped to suits, screens on the wall showing stock tickers and corporate propaganda. I'd visited a few times as a kid, back when Dad thought taking us to the office would impress us into shape. I remembered staring up at those screens thinking, this is where important people live. Now I checked in as a guest speaker. The event room was half full when I arrived, young employees, older ones, a mix of curiosity and boredom on their faces. A banner read, Innovation Spotlight, Building What's Next. Dad was there, in the back row. He wasn't holding court. He wasn't surrounded by colleagues. He sat alone, hands folded, watching. The moderator introduced me with a bio I barely recognized. It was short, at least. Please welcome Ethan Hale, co-founder of Luminarc and founder of the ARC Fund. Polite applause. I walked to the front, adjusted the mic, and took in the room. Hi, I said. I'm Ethan. My dad used to work here. He's in the back, pretending he doesn't know me. A few people turned. Nervous laughter rippled. Dad rolled his eyes, but a corner of his mouth twitched. I grew up on stories about this company, I said. About how hard you all work. About the deals, the late nights, the sacrifices. I also grew up on stories about myself. Those were less flattering. I talked about narratives, about the danger of deciding too early who someone is. The promising one, the reliable one, the mess, the disappointment, about how those labels creep into performance reviews and family dinners, how they become prophecies we either fight or fulfill. I talked about building my first app, about losing control of it. I didn't name my father, I didn't have to. The people who mattered already knew. I talked about Luminarc, how we'd built slowly, quietly, how we'd made a point of documenting every handshake, every deal. Fool me once, I said. They laughed and winced at the same time. I talked about the ARC Fund, about kids who don't have rooms like this in their future unless someone holds a door open and says, you belong here. I watched faces shift, some skeptical, some moved, some calculating. The old guard, the new blood, the ones who'd already decided innovation was someone else's job, and the ones who still believed they could change things. I ended with this. Most of you never knew me when I lived in this building's shadow, I said. Just like most of the kids we'll fund have never set foot in a place like this. But here's the thing. Potential doesn't care about last names or narratives. It just needs enough light and room to grow. I glanced at the back. Dad's eyes were wet. I pretended not to see. The real explosion came at Thanksgiving, not from my father, from the rest of the family. Thanksgiving at the Hale house was always an event, a performance of gratitude scripted by my mother and directed by my father. Long table, too much food, carefully assigned seats. Extended family invited based on a complex algorithm of obligation, reciprocity, and status. This year the room felt different. Word had traveled. Some cousins greeted me with new enthusiasm. Ethan, man of the hour, one said, clapping me on the back a little too hard. Heard you're the one to talk to about innovative investments these days. I smiled thinly. You heard wrong, I said. Others watched me with thinly veiled resentment, as if my bank account had personally slashed their tires. Mom fluttered around, overcompensating. We're just so proud of all of you, she said loudly at one point. Michael with his promotion, Caroline with her show, Ethan with his projects. I caught Maya's eye. She pressed her lips together to hide a smile. Dad stayed mostly quiet. That alone set everyone on edge. He made no speeches beyond a brief, subdued grace. No jokes at my expense. No references to couches. Caroline texted me from across the table. Caroline, who replaced him with this upgraded model, and can I keep the receipt? I replied under the table. Me. Let's wait until after dessert to decide. The tension snapped halfway through the meal. It started with Aunt Linda. She'd always been one of Dad's biggest fans. She'd benefited from his generosity over the years. Loan money, co-signed mortgages, job referrals for her kids. In return, she'd defended him like a security detail, especially against any suggestion he was ever wrong. So Ethan, she said, in that too loud, too bright tone that meant trouble, I hear you're very successful now. Keeping it all very hush-hush, She laughed. We had to read about it in the paper like strangers. I swallowed a mouthful of dry turkey. It wasn't exactly front-page news. It was in the business section, she said. Your uncle nearly choked on his coffee. That boy? He said. The one who couldn't keep a job? Always nice to be someone's coffee hazard, I said. She waved a hand. Oh, you know how he is. But really, we were surprised in a good way, of course. She leaned forward. And this Fund, helping kids. Very noble, very charitable. Her eyes gleamed. Does it only help strangers? There it was. Maya's smoothing hand under the table didn't reach that far, but I could feel her warning in the air. The criteria are on the website, I said. It's open application. Anyone can apply. Anyone, she repeated. Interesting. She glanced significantly down the table at her eldest son, Chad, who had turned 30 without ever meeting a job he liked. You know, Chad has always been very creative, very misunderstood by the traditional system. Chad shrugged, smirking. I'm an out-of-the-box thinker, he said, like you, cuz. I had to physically stop my eyebrows from climbing off my face. Chad, Aunt Linda continued, could really benefit from mentorship, maybe a small investment. Help him get his YouTube channel off the ground. It's the new frontier, you know. Across the table, Caroline choked on her wine. Maya's fingers dug into my thigh. Don't. I smiled politely. The ARC Fund is focused on kids from under-resourced communities, I said, and the grants are tied to specific projects with clear social or educational impact. It's not a personal venture capital pool. Aunt Linda's smile thinned. So family doesn't count as under-resourced, she said. Interesting. Linda, Mom said weakly, let's not. No, I'm just saying, Aunt Linda barreled on, sensing an audience. Richard has always said we're family. We support each other. We don't let each other struggle. Now there's finally some extra in the pot, and suddenly there are rules. She looked at Dad. Is that how you raised your children, Richard? To throw money at strangers and ignore their own? Dad's jaw clenched. I didn't raise them to throw money at anyone, he said. It's his fund. But your name is all over it, she said. Everyone knows he's your son. People will think you agree with how it's run. For once I do, he said. The table went quiet. Aunt Linda blinked. Excuse me? I agree with him, he repeated. It's not a family ATM. But I've always done too much, he cut in. Covered too many bills, smoothed over too many messes, including yours. Her face reddened. Are you saying? I'm saying, he said, voice rising slightly, that some of you have gotten very comfortable assuming there will always be a hail safety net. That no matter what you do, no matter how many bad decisions you make, there's a check waiting at the end. She gaped at him. Around her other relatives shifted uneasily. He set his fork down. I'm retired, he said. In case you've forgotten, I don't have infinite resources. I have what I built, and I'm starting to realize I'd rather see some of that go toward kids who need an actual ladder than toward adults who keep jumping into holes and demanding someone pull them out. A nervous laugh went around the table. People weren't sure if he was serious. He looked very serious. And since we're talking about it, he added, there have been assumptions about when I go, about the house, the accounts, the benefits, as you so delicately put it. Aunt Linda frowned. We're not. Yes, you are, he said sharply. I've heard the way you talk when Richard leaves us the house. When the money comes through, you talk like you've already spent it. He glanced at me briefly, then at Michael, then at Caroline. I've been rewriting some things, he said. You could have heard a breadcrumb drop. Mom stiffened. Richard, she said. He held up a hand. Ruth, it's done. They deserve to know. Aunt Linda's eyes narrowed. Rewriting what? She demanded. My will, he said. The estate plan. What goes where when I die? She laughed once, brittle. You're being dramatic, she said. You're not going anywhere. Everyone goes somewhere, he said. What matters is what you leave behind. He looked at me again. There was something like respect in his gaze. It still startled me. I realized, he went on, that I was doing with my money what I did with my words, using it to keep people in line, rewarding the ones who made me look good, punishing the ones who didn't. I called it providing. It wasn't. Mom stared at him like she'd never heard him speak before. So I changed it, he said. How? Michael asked slowly. His knuckles were white. The house goes to your mother, he said. If she wants to sell it or live in it until she's 90, that's her call. She can do what she wants with any leftover cash from it. That's the only non-negotiable piece. Mom's eyes filled. The rest, he said, used to be divided between the three of you and a slush fund for other family needs. He glanced pointedly at Aunt Linda. College tuitions, down payments, bailing people out of whatever mess they'd wandered into. Chad shifted, suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. I've scrapped that, he said. Aunt Linda's mouth dropped open. You can't just... I can, he said. It's my will. Where is it going then? Another aunt asked, voice tight. To Ethan? Because he's the rich one now? Multiple heads turned my way. I felt, more than saw, Maya straighten beside me. No, Dad said. The room exhaled in a confused chorus. It's going to the ARC Fund, he said. Time stopped. What? Aunt Linda squeaked. Most of it, he clarified. Not every cent. Certain accounts have other stipulations. But the bulk, the part everyone's been quietly calculating their share of, is earmarked for scholarships and grants, for kids who have ideas but no runway, for people who don't have a cousin sitting in a boardroom or an uncle who can make a few calls. He pushed back his chair slightly, as if needing more room to breathe. If I'm going to be remembered for anything, he said, I'd rather it be that than the guy who made sure half his relatives could lease BMWs they couldn't afford without his help. Aunt Linda went red. How dare you, she said. Everything we've been through together, and you just... Everything we've been through, he shot back. You mean the times I paid your rent, covered your credit card debt, got Chad 3 interviews he blew off because they were too early in the morning? That everything, she spluttered. We assumed. I know what you assume, he said, that it would keep coming, that my success was a savings account you could withdraw from indefinitely, that my kids would inherit that obligation and keep it going. I'm telling you now, they won't, and they shouldn't. All eyes swung back to me. I felt every gaze like a weight old Ethan would have folded. Made a joke. Tried to ease the tension. New Ethan took a breath. He's right, I said. Somewhere down the table, a fork clinked against a plate. If you came here tonight assuming I'm now the family bank, I said, please adjust that expectation. I'm not. The ARC Fund has clear criteria. The application is public. There's a board. I have less power there than you think. I built it that way on purpose. So nothing for family, Aunt Linda said, the words sour. Nothing by default, I said. If your kid applies and genuinely fits the criteria, they'll go through the same process as everyone else. If they're selected, great. It'll be because of their work, not their last name. If not, well, welcome to every under-resourced kid's daily reality. That's cruel, she snapped. No, Caroline cut in. It's fair. For once. You don't understand, another cousin said. Jobs are hard to find. The economy, I know, I said. Believe me, I know. I've been fired. I've watched my bank account hit single digits. I've eaten instant noodles for a month while building something I wasn't sure would ever launch. I gestured around. The difference between then and now is not that I suddenly deserve more. It's that I got lucky enough, yes, lucky, to hit at the right time with the right people. I want to use that luck to change systems. Not to keep propping up people who hate me, but want my money. Who hates you? Mom said, scandalized. I shrugged. Maybe hate is strong. Resent might be better. A few relatives looked away. Dad watched all of this with an expression I couldn't quite parse. Pride? Shame? Maybe both. What about us? Michael asked quietly. Your kids. Dad turned to him. You're getting something, he said. Just not what you thought. Michael frowned. Meaning? You're getting the accounts with your names already on them, Dad said. The college funds we set up for your kids. The life insurance. Some smaller investments earmarked for each of you. It's not nothing, but it's not a jackpot. It's a cushion. So, no house? Caroline asked. The house goes to your mother, he repeated. What she chooses to do with it after I'm gone is between her and whatever conscience she has left once she stops cleaning up after me. Mom gave a watery laugh that turned into a sob. I'm, I'm okay with that, Michael said slowly. He sounded surprised at himself. Aunt Linda stared at him. You can't be serious, she said. This affects your kids too. It does, he said. But Ethan's right. We've been planning like Dad's money is some inevitable inheritance. It's made me lazy in ways I didn't see. He glanced at me. I've been assuming I could take certain risks because there was always a parachute, even if I never said it out loud. I nodded. That's what parachutes do, he sighed. I'm not happy, he said, but I'm not going to fight it. Not if the alternative is watching you. He tipped his chin at Dad. Keep buying our loyalty forever. The look on Dad's face at that hit was complicated, painful. Honest. Caroline raised her glass. Well, she said, to the end of the Hale Benefits program and the beginning of something else. Mom wiped her eyes and lifted her own glass. To something else, she echoed. Reluctantly, one by one, others followed. Not everyone toasted. Some sipped grudgingly. Aunt Linda kept her glass on the table, lips pressed tight. But the moment had shifted. A line had been drawn. Later that night, after the last casserole dish had been wrapped and the last passive-aggressive goodbye hug given, I stood alone on my parents' back patio. It was cold enough that I could see my breath. The yard looked smaller than it had when I was 10, sprinting across it in worn sneakers, pretending the fence was the edge of the world. I heard the sliding door open behind me. You always did like to sneak out here, Dad said. I smiled faintly. It was the only place you couldn't see me from the dining room. He came to stand beside me, hands in his pockets. That went well, he said dryly. Depends on your metric, I replied. He huffed something like a laugh. They'll be complaining for months, he said, about betrayal, about what they're owed. You prepared for that? I asked. He stared out at the dark yard. No, he said, with more honesty than I expected. But I think I can handle it. Better than I could handle watching you tear up that offer and walk out of my dinner thinking I'd never see you again. I swallowed. I wasn't trying to punish you, I said, not with the will, not with the fun, not with anything. I know, he said. That's what hurts. We stood in silence for a bit. The ARC fund, he said eventually. You really think it'll work? That it'll change anything? Not the whole world, I said, but maybe a few trajectories. That's enough for me. He nodded slowly. When I started out, he said, all I could think about was never being poor again. Never worrying about rent or food or whether the lights would stay on. I thought if I could just stack enough up, I'd be safe. I get that, I said. So did I. I never thought about what it would do to the people around me, he admitted, how tying everything to money, my time, my approval, my love, would twist everything. By the time I noticed, it was habit, easier to keep going than to stop. That's how systems work, I said quietly. They make the worst behavior feel normal. He looked at me. You really are rich, huh? He asked. Not just compared to me, compared to most people. On paper, I said, yeah. He studied my face. Does it feel like you thought it would? I thought about the number in my account, the security, the guilt, the relief, the weight. No, I said, it feels smaller and heavier both at once. He nodded like that answer made sense. Last night, he said, when you were talking about systems and doors, I realized something. I've spent my life holding a door open and then guarding it. I waited. I like being the one people had to go through, he said. It made me feel needed, important, powerful. He grimaced. You'd think having a title at a multinational company would have been enough. But apparently I needed to be king of Thanksgiving too. I smiled, surprised. That may be the first time you've made a joke about yourself, I said. Don't get used to it, he muttered. We stood there, the night pressing and gentle and cold. I can't fix what I did to you, he said at last. With the app, with the jokes, with everything. I can't give you back those 20-something years when you thought you were less than you are. I stared at the fence. I know, I said. My voice didn't shake as much as I thought it would. He took a breath. But I can do this, he said. I can take what I built and point it somewhere other than my ego. I can stop using money to buy love. And I can stop calling you a failure. My throat closed unexpectedly at that. I'd like that, I said very quietly. He shifted. And if you'll let me, he added, I can help with the fund. Not with decisions, he said quickly. I'm not trying to be on your board. God forbid. But if you need an old man who knows how to bully reluctant donors on the golf course, I have a few favors I can call in. I laughed, startled. You're volunteering to be our bulldozer? I'm very good at being an asshole in the right direction, he said. Might as well put it to use. I considered him. You'd be okay, I said slowly, with your name not being on the masthead? With this being mine? He looked almost offended. I insist on it, he said. This is your thing. I'm done stamping my name on everything and everyone. I nodded. All right, I said. I'll take your donor bullying services. On one condition. He raised an eyebrow. Name it. If any of them ask why you're so passionate about this fund, I said, you tell them the truth, not the polished version. The real one. He grimaced. You drive a hard bargain. Comes with the territory, I said. He stared out at the yard. We're not going to have a big hug now, are we? He asked. No, I said. We're going to keep standing here, both pretending it's just about the will and the fun, while secretly acknowledging that something actually changed. He snorted. Good, he said. Too old for emotional whiplash. We fell quiet again. You know, he said eventually, when you told that room you were richer than me, I wanted to throw my glass at you. I know, I said, but you were right, he said. Not just about the money, about worth. I built a life around being needed. You're building one around being useful. It's different. I blinked hard. That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Don't quote me, he muttered. I'll deny it. We went back inside. The ARC Fund's first cohort launched 6 months later. We rented a small community hall, white walls, bad lighting, chairs that wobbled. It was all we could afford after putting most of the budget into the actual grants. Maya printed name tags. Caroline put up a makeshift banner with our logo. Michael fussed over the sign-in sheets like they were high-stakes contracts. Relax, Caroline told him. This isn't a board meeting. No one's going to sue us if they don't write in block letters. You'd be surprised, he muttered, but he loosened his tie. The kids trickled in, one by one. Nervous, curious, some trying to look too cool to care, others buzzing with barely contained excitement. They came from schools I knew, neighborhoods I recognized, stories that felt uncomfortably familiar. I shook their hands. I asked them about their ideas, apps, community platforms, after-school robotics clubs, art programs that used VR to tell stories no one else was listening to. My chest ached with pride I didn't know where to put. Halfway through, I saw him, Dad, standing awkwardly near the back, wearing a blazer over a t-shirt that looked suspiciously like one of mine. He held a clipboard and a pen, as if that could justify his presence. You came, I said, genuinely surprised. I said I would, he grumbled. I'm working the donation table. The donation table? I repeated. He jerked his head toward a corner where a folding table held a laptop, a card reader, and a simple sign. Support the ARC. A plastic jar sat there, already sprinkled with small bills and coins. We sent a note to some of my old colleagues, he said. Told them if they wanted to make up for ignoring the nerdy interns, this was their chance. My throat tightened. And they came. A few, he said. A few more sent checks. Some ignored it. Some probably crumpled the letter. But enough responded that you won't have to choose between funding ideas and paying rent for this space next year. I swallowed. Thank you, I said, for doing that, for showing up. He shrugged, visibly uncomfortable. Don't make a thing of it, he said. This is your circus. I'm just here to point a few elephants toward the tent. I laughed. At the end of the night, after the last kid had left with a folder of resources and a head full of new possibilities, Dad lingered. He watched Caroline pull down the banner, watched Michael stack chairs, Watched Maya slide her arm through mine. You did good, he said quietly. You helped, I replied. I followed your lead, he corrected. Big difference. I met his eyes. Yeah, I said. There is. We stood there, the empty hall around us smelling like sweat and cheap coffee and new beginnings. Does it feel different? He asked, helping like this? Instead of, you know. He waved vaguely, encompassing decades of checks and lectures and strings attached. Yeah, I said. It feels cleaner. He nodded. I'm still rich, you know, I said lightly, trying to cut the intensity. In case you forgot. He snorted. Believe me, your cousin Linda reminds me every time she calls, which is less often now that she knows she's not getting a house out of me. You okay with that? I asked. He thought about it. Part of me wants to call her ungrateful, he said. The other part remembers a boy who thought the same about his father once. I flinched. I'm trying, he added quickly, to see it differently. That's all I'm asking, I said. He shifted his weight. You're really leaving most of your own estate to this thing too, he asked. My lawyer nearly choked when he saw your plan. He thought I was the dramatic one. Yeah, I said. We are. You don't want your kids to have what you didn't, he asked. I want them to have what matters, I said. Stability, choices, not an expectation that someone else's bank account exists to fix their mistakes. We'll set them up, but we're not handing them a blank check. He nodded slowly. A small smile tugged at his mouth. You really are doing the opposite of me, he said, in every way. Not every, I said. I did get your stubbornness and my jawline, he said. I groaned. Don't ruin the moment. He chuckled. Ethan, he said, and his voice changed to softer. That night, at the dinner, when you said your very rich identity, he struggled with the phrase, didn't make you any more worthy than you were before? I didn't believe you. Not really. I've spent too long believing money is the only scorecard that matters. I know, I said, but watching you, he gestured around, doing this, walking away from a big payout just to make a point, changing your will so your kids have to build their own lives instead of renting yours. Telling your own father no and still answering his calls? He shook his head. It's, changed something. In here. He tapped his chest, then grimaced at the sentimentality. I hate it, he added quickly. Feels weird, I smiled. It's called a conscience, I said. Welcome to the club. He rolled his eyes. Don't push it. We turned the lights off together. Later, at home, Maya and I collapsed onto the couch. You realize, she said, that you just closed the loop on your own narrative arc, right? I groaned into a cushion. If you start monologuing about character development, I'm leaving you for someone who only speaks in TikToks. She laughed and sat on my legs. Too late, she said. You married a woman who does narrative therapy for fun. I sighed, but I smiled. Okay, enlighten me, I said. What loop did I close? You walked into a room your father once owned, she said, and told a story he never could have. You turned the thing he used to crush you, his narrative about you, into fuel. You built something with it. Then you built something for other people with the proceeds, she poked my chest. You didn't just become very rich, Ethan. You became untouchable, not because of the money, because you finally stopped letting their stories define you. I looked at her. You did that, I said. At that dinner when you took the mic, she shook her head. I lit the match, she said. You walked through the fire. You're the one who kept going back, who said, no, this changes now, who tore up the offer, who changed the estate plan, who looked your brother in the eye and said, I love you, but I'm not responsible for your sense of entitlement. I swallowed. You could have gone full revenge, she said, cut them all off, bought a yacht called Petty and sailed away. Instead, you chose structure, boundaries, generosity with guardrails. That's redemption, not for them, for you. I thought about my father on the patio, his rough apology, his offer to bully donors, the moment at Thanksgiving when he turned his arsenal on the relatives who'd been circling my bank account like vultures. He's changing too, I said. Slowly, she agreed. Messily. But yeah, he is, not for the optics, for real. That retirement dinner, I said, was his last day as the hero of his own myth. And the first day of him being a person, she said, flawed, selfish, capable of growth. We sat there in the quiet. My phone buzzed on the table. A new ARC Fund application notification. I picked it up, read the first lines, smiled. Another kid, she asked. Yeah, I said. Wants to build a mentorship platform for first-gen college students so they don't feel like they're sneaking into someone else's life. I looked up. Sound familiar? She squeezed my hand. You know exactly what to say to that one, she said. I did, I typed. We see you. You're not sneaking in. You belong here. Let's talk about how to build it. I hit send. For a moment, I thought about the scared younger version of myself who had once sat in my father's kitchen, humiliated, believing I'd failed at the only shot I'd ever get. I wanted to reach back through time and hand him this email. I couldn't, but I could send it forward to someone else whose father might not be in the room or might be standing in the doorway, learning how to open his hands. Maya rested her head on my shoulder. Still wish you had that extra six-figure check you tore up? She asked. I thought about it. Sometimes, I said honestly. When I'm doing mental math at 3 a.m., it whispers to me. But then I remember the look on his face when I ripped it, and the look on his face tonight, and I think I trailed off. You think? She prompted. I think I traded the wrong kind of power for the right kind, I said. And I'm okay with the exchange. She smiled. That's my very rich husband, she said softly. Rich in the correct categories. I groaned. Never say that again. Too late, she said. It's canon. I closed my eyes and exhaled. Outside, the world went on. Families fought and forgave and repeated their patterns. Companies made money and lost it and made it again. Somewhere, my father was probably telling someone, for the first time, the true story of that app deal. Maybe they'd be shocked. Maybe they'd shrug. It didn't matter, because for the first time in my life, my worth wasn't hanging on his next sentence. I had my own, and I wasn't ashamed to say it out loud anymore. I had failed. I had succeeded. I had gotten very, very rich. And the richest part of all was this quiet, unremarkable night on a second-hand couch with the woman who'd grabbed the mic when I couldn't, and the knowledge that the next story I told about myself would be mine, all mine, forever.